And we're back here with PSD Sports, our basketball preview here with David Haase and Kevin Lytle. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the boys' side, and we'll start off with the Fort Collins Lambkins, who have a strong team, won the conference last year in the Front Range. Tell us a little bit about, David, what you're thinking here.
I think Coach Alcaraz has got another 5 to fit in for the 5 he lost from last year. You know, it's that, how do you do that as a coach, Kevin? You got to get your new players in every year, but boy, losing 5 all at one time is a big task.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You would think you lose your top 5 guys, well, it's a rebuilding year. Well, I don't think so. I mean, these guys have stepped in. It's just the next wave. You know, they have a lot of talent, a lot of guys. You know, we could talk about, 5 or 6 different guys. They have a lot of shooters. They seem to move the ball really well. This is going to be a good team that's going to contend for the conference title once again.
We've got to watch them already with one broadcast, and Brian Reed, Jacob Faffinger, they were not really surprises. That the low post players are active athletes, but out front you got as Randy always says, the high school game is a guards game for both girls and boys. And Asiri Palacio and Damian Marilla both have really stepped up.
Yeah, Palacio, he's kind of growing before our eyes. He got a little time as a freshman, a little more last year. Now he's kind of taken over his team to run as the point guard. Mm-hmm. Marilla's playing really well. To help fill those positions that were lost last year. A lot of depth. They can shoot it really well. This is a good team, and as always with Monty's teams, they're really tough. They defend well, and they disrupt you.
Because they're not going to go out there and they're not going to blow people out. Their style of play is going to be a little different. It's that frustrating defense they do so well that just stops teams.
Well, you hate to play them because they beat you up. They've got that half-court trap that comes out, and they kind of lull you into some false security, and then all of a sudden they come out with that half-court trap. So they should be they'll be a tough team this year, as they always are. And again, we talk a little bit about the difference in public and private schools. You get who you get typically in the public schools, and so Fort Collins seems to get 5, and Monty seems to make a team out of them every year. We'll go talk a little bit about the Fossil Ridge team. They have had 5 straight 20-win seasons until last year. They still won 18 last year, so that's not a for Fossil Ridge, that's a down year, but for most teams, that's a really good year. So talk a little bit, Kevin, about the Fossil Ridge SaberCats boys team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned last year, they almost upset Eagle Crest. They were a call or 2 away in the final minutes there of beating Eagle Crest in the playoffs. And now they have to transition. They had Quaid in the middle last year, dominant big man. They don't have that now. They're a guard-heavy shooting team, highlighted by Braxton Burlett. I think it's fair to say he might be the best shooter in Colorado.
He is.
He scored 48 right before the Christmas break, setting a school record, and he's averaging just short of 30. He's had a few 30-point games already. Mm-hmm. Great shooter, and then there are a lot of shooters around him.
We're going to have to bring in other players too. It's 5A basketball. One kid will take you a long ways, but not as far as you can go as a team. And Garrett Schmidt, along with Cam DeHart, I look for both of those to step up and be players that kind of get them back, give them a chance to get that 18 wins again this year.
And Matt Johansson, one of the best coaches really in the state, has proven it over the long haul now. Again, 5 straight 20-win seasons. I think over that stretch was one of the top 2 or 3 teams in wins over that stretch. So they're going to be there at the end regardless. And they've been the cream of the crop in Fort Collins for a while, but it's evening out a little bit. So we'll talk a little bit about Poudre boys. Last year did not have a great year. This year coming in, new coach. Tell us a little bit about what you...
Well, Jeff Shelley picked up a team that obviously didn't have success that they'd like to have last year, but they do have, certainly one player in Mitch Yoakum to talk about.
Yeah, he's averaging 25 or so points a game. He can really shoot it. He's one of those guys that you better not leave him open. Hands down, man down. They say he'll knock him down. Hit a lot of threes. He's going to have a lot of threes this year. They need him to shoot a lot. He's going to be a volume shooter. He's going to put up a lot of points.
Well, with Diaz and Conde, but then you also you got your bigs down low with those guys. They can do some of the work. You're going to need more help though on the outside for Yoakum for sure. I think Troy McFadden, the sophomore's got a chance to step up this year and make his mark.
Yeah, he can hit threes. I saw a game earlier this year. I think he hit 4 in a quarter. So when he's feeling it, he can knock down a few, and that'll open up room for Yoakum and some other guys. So they're going to win some games by hitting some threes probably. That's their biggest strength. They have a few shooters out there.
And McFadden is quarterback on the football team as well.
Yeah, so a lot of guys on that team are multi-sport
Poudre's got more multi-sport athletes, I think, than anybody in the city.
Yep.
Which kind of speaks sometimes to the slow start some of the teams have. You don't realize some of the teams have just basketball players, but a lot of the teams who have football players tend to start slowly.
Yeah, it takes a while to transition.
It does. So finally, we'll talk a little bit about the Rocky Mountain boys team, which we've already seen them a few games this year, the most improved team in the city by far.
I think that's a good point. It's coming across when you said from football to basketball, when they've got Justin Green and Tyler Hyland, just to name two, coming out from being a strong football team, but now they got to switch it to the hard court.
Yeah, I think you saw Tyler Hyland kind of show that growth. Maybe some slower games early on, but as you kind of get that touchback, it's not a natural thing to,
There's no laces
to just
on the
pick it up.
basketball.
Yeah, so he had a big game in the last game before break, and I think he's come along, and they're a really athletic team. Like you mentioned, I think it's easily most improved team in the city, and they're going to create a lot of problems for teams in the Front Range.
And Brian Taffel, the head coach, is also mentioned in his second year, and we should talk about him being a Longmont graduate. He knows the Front Range basketball, been around growing up in it, but he's happy to have the depth that he's got. He's had 7 kids that have hit averaging 6 or better, and 5 already have had 10 points or better. So we'll see how that growth continues for the Lobos.
They got a really strong sophomore class. A couple of Elliott and Johnson, a couple of sophomores already made some pretty big splashes in the league and in their game so far. So Rocky is definitely somebody that you haven't heard from for a couple of years, but I think easily we'll hear from this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of those city games are really, really hotly contested with Rocky. Fossil and Fort Collins is always the premier matchup as far as key games. Last year, Fort Collins beat Fossil Ridge at Fort Collins, which actually won the conference for
Kept it
them.
in town.
Yeah, it was a virtual conference title game right there. That was,
Yeah, and this year I wouldn't surprise anybody probably if that didn't happen at Fossil Ridge this year. It's a big game.
Yeah, that's always, I think, one of the ones that whether you have connection to Fossil Ridge or Fort Collins, you want to go to that game. It's always fun. The gym is just rocky, and that's one of the best games in the city, and that's one of the, probably an underrated rivalry around the state. It's just always fun.
Yeah, and there's been really good players on both teams for a while, and so it's always very competitive. We know the history of Coach Johansson was at Fort Collins a few years ago and stuff, so that's a good. We'll have that on Stream It Sports, which is our network that we stream these games on. StreamItSports.com/PSD. You will be able to find many broadcasts. You can go on there, see our schedule, as well as the replays of these games on Channel 10 as well. So anyway, for Randy McCoy, David Haase, and Kevin Lytle, this has been PSD Sports Talk. We'll see you next time.